Well, I know we're going to have more people coming in and joining us, but I think we'll get started here and get the
Cool.
process underway. Want to welcome everyone to the Sports Philanthropy Network webinar. My name is Roy Kessel, and I'm the founder of the Sports Philanthropy Network. I want to welcome everybody here on my behalf and on behalf of our whole Sports Philanthropy Network team. We have Kayla Bradham, who's our VP of Community Development, Brian Zuzka, Director of Corporate Relations, Abby DeRossi, Kelsey DeNolo, and an amazing group of interns that have really stepped up and helped us produce all of this outstanding content. So today we're very excited to have Rajiv Khanna from Sponsor United, and he's going to share some of the terrific insights that they've put together. Before we get started, I do want to encourage everybody to share your video and to participate and interact. Make sure you put your questions in the chat, and we can try and get those included and interjected into everything that we have going on. There's a lot of new ways that we've created to be able to interact with the Sports Philanthropy Network this year, and you're going to get a survey after our webinar today, and we encourage you to take just a couple minutes to complete that and help us understand what other topics you'd like to see and give us your feedback. But there's some new ways to engage with us in 2021. So we launched task forces. We have a whole page of task forces that are starting. Applications have been coming in. We encourage you to look at those topics and see how you might be able to contribute and participate in those task forces. Our member-only message boards have just launched, and they're going to be open for anybody through the end of March. And then we're going to have those be a sanctuary for members to be able to have private conversations and connect with our community. And then, of course, Sports Philanthropy World will be coming up at the end of June. That will be June 28th and 29th of this year. And so those are some easy ways to get connected in. Obviously, you know our typical events and programs, the webinars, the podcasts. Sports Philanthropy podcast that I host is every Tuesday and Thursday. Kayla Bradham hosts Legacy After the Locker Room every Saturday. And we've been fortunate to have some incredible guests with very diverse backgrounds and organizations doing amazing work in the community. I encourage you to connect with us on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We've got it out there on all of those platforms. That makes sure you're up to date on the latest things that are going on. And then we've got a new system for our email communications so that you can pick exactly what you want to get: the weekly newsstand, the monthly newsletter, our event calendar, and updates on webinars and podcasts. So we encourage you to take advantage of that. And of course, we would appreciate your support in having you join as a member or donate to the Sports Philanthropy Network. Our mission is to help everyone, and we want to keep these programs free or as low cost as possible, and we can only do that with your support. So without further ado, I want to introduce Rajiv Khanna from Sponsor United. Rajiv's got a strong background on the sponsorship side and has put together a great presentation for us today. I do want to encourage you, if you can, just to mute your microphones just so we don't get background noise, and then we can obviously unmute those for questions or help follow up from there. So Rajiv, thanks for
Awesome.
being here.
Thank you for having me, Roy, and everyone. It's good to meet some of you. I think I see some familiar faces, but really excited to be part of this. Can you guys see my screen? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, cool. So Rajiv Khanna, I lead partnerships here at Sponsor United. I'm kind of a data guy by trade. I came from the large world of Nielsen, specifically Nielsen Sports and Entertainment. When I was there, I ran the professional sports team business for a couple of years, and I came into this rapidly growing business that all my pro team clients kept gushing about called Sponsor United. Found out that the founder lived 3 minutes from my house, met him at Starbucks, saw what they had built and what they were building, and I jumped on as soon as possible. So I've been here about 18 months. Really cool platform we've built where essentially we're kind of giving everyone a giant peek behind the curtain as to what brands are partnered with which rights holders, what assets are being bought and sold with creative images. So think of it as almost like a Google Maps, Bloomberg terminal. But the nonprofit space has been a really big area. We've seen a lot of growth, and especially the data that we've collated and collected first party. I was checking last night after I got off a call with Roy, and I think we've actually tracked like 1,900 plus, almost 2,000 cause-related campaigns in the last 12 months alone. So I'm actually going to take you through some really cool activations that we're seeing and talk about some trends. And if anyone has any questions, we can kind of address them towards the end, or if you want to jump in, that's cool too. But what's cool about the insights and the information I'm going to share is it really kind of shows how brands, rights holders, and nonprofits are coming together, harmonizing to tell their story to raise awareness and funds. So we're going to get into some fun stuff in the next couple of minutes. The three trends I want to talk about, I don't think they're going to be kind of mind-blowing. I think they'll be somewhat obvious, but there's obviously been a heavy shift towards cause marketing in the last 12, 14 months with the virus. I know when around this time last year, when the world kind of went sideways, I personally reached out to about 10, 15 of our professional sports team clients and asked how they were coping, what was going on, what were their sponsors saying, and I got a unanimous response from all of them. The number one thing we care about right now is our local community, giving back to the folks who have supported us year over year. So that was something that was really interesting to hear and really kind of gratifying as well. But we're also seeing hunger relief coupled with local community come up a lot, and we'll go through a couple examples. And another thing that's come up a lot is youth initiatives, right? Keeping students and kids active, healthy, especially those in need. So we'll walk through a couple examples. There's been this heavy emphasis against topical causes like racial equality, women's empowerment, green initiatives too. So I'm going to kind of highlight some cool campaigns we've seen around that that are a bit unique. And again, probably not a huge shock, but this kind of shift, we live in a digitized world, right? Where a lot of us kind of are trapped in our respective houses, and some people are kind of getting back to normalcy. But regardless, we had already been seeing this kind of shift to video content, and specifically things happening in social media to kind of help storytell. So we're going to go through some cool, unique activations in that space as well. But we'll jump right in. Now, before we get into them, actually, just a couple things that we pulled from our data that I thought were interesting. We actually pulled together an infographic on nonprofits, which we'll share and distribute after this meeting in session as well. But what was cool was to see the top 5 assets that are actually being provided to nonprofits from rights holders, given some partnerships. So the big thing that we're seeing is storytelling via digital media and really that highly produced custom content, a lot of it happening on social media, Twitter, Instagram, with endorsements. Those are kind of reigning king and queen as 1 and 2. Official sponsor, so that's use of marks, intellectual property, and then broadcast ads on TV and radio spots are again kind of filling at the top 5. But just to kind of give you some examples here with some images. Now, kind of tying back to the hunger relief and local community, these are 2 really cool activations that I wanted to kind of call out and talk about. So the first one is the Brooklyn Nets and Hospital for Special Surgery. They teamed up to kind of supply a pantry of food at a local school in Brooklyn. I think it was actually in the Bed-Stuy area, where food insecurity was affecting over 1/4 of the local community. So they really stepped up to kind of help the food bank of New York City. Really cool initiative. And then another one that we kind of saw across the pond here, Cadbury, the chocolate company, among other products that they produce, they provided care packages to the local community in need, supporting Sheffield United fans. Additionally, something that was interesting too, is kind of an extension of this campaign, is they also donated some local advertising rights around Sheffield United and that partnership to local businesses who suffered from COVID-19. So they were really, really trying to extend out and help the local community, not just with hunger relief, but local businesses that were struggling because of all the shutdown. So a couple cool campaigns to call out there. This next slide's pretty cool. So Video content is really king, right? And shockingly, you think Facebook, where a lot of longer form content is posted, and Instagram, where there's a lot more adoption. But these three were actually on Twitter. So the first one is with Mike Evans, um, recent Super Bowl champion, wide receiver of the Tampa Bay Bucks. I think he actually caught a touchdown in the game. He was really pushing this No Kid Hungry campaign with Pepsi, where he was trying to get individual folks to donate up to $1 million to match Pepsi's $1 million donation. All of these are hyperlinked, so when we distribute this, you guys can kind of go back and look at some of this content. The second one's really cool. So Matthew McConaughey, obviously big personality, actor, kind of seems like he's everywhere, right? This is actually a tweet where he was responding to a post from Leonardo DiCaprio, challenging him to kind of participate in this No Kid Hungry campaign. So the same kind of post that Mike Evans did. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Wolf of Wall Street and the kind of pounding of the chest humming, but that's how he starts out this video. So a little bit of humor there. In addition to donating, he called out a couple of celebrities, and also personally donated time with him and his family in his University of Texas club suite that allowed fans who donated the most to come watch a game with him. He's a big University of Texas fan. I think he lives in Austin. So that was a really cool and unique activation that we had tracked. And then the last one, this was Blue Cross Blue Shield with the Carolina Panthers, Tepper Sports and Entertainment. And it's really supporting the Boys and Girls Club of America. They donated 300 meals to a local community in North Carolina. So again, really cool content that was produced, and you could see the video content really resonates, really strong engagement that's kind of being generated here. This is a really cool one. So kind of tapping more into the celebrity and athlete endorsement. And I know it's really kind of hard to get in front of these celebrities, but with micro influencers and kind of up and coming influencers, people are doing some really cool stuff. So the first one I wanted to call out was Silk Soy Milk. They teamed up with Olympic stars Michael Phelps and Aly Raisman ahead of the Olympics this summer, which were postponed, to donate 1.5 million meals, about $150,000 worth of funds. I believe this was Feeding America, if my memory serves me correctly, but you could see kind of the use of marks and the kind of name, image, likeness over here. Ben and Jerry's is on the bottom left. This is actually video content, and I would give us a quick Google. This is a really cool activation that they did with Colin Kaepernick. They actually created a flavor called Change the World. And it's actually something that I think you have to pre-order. So it's not something that's sold in stores. And all proceeds are going to the Know Your Rights campaign and Foundation for Racial Justice. So obviously Colin Kaepernick, big proponent of racial justice, and cool to see some CPG kind of snacking ice cream brands participating in a unique way. Shawn Mendes, big pop star. He partnered with Chipotle and formed this kind of Wonder Grant for young activists that are fighting for sustainability. And this is cool because he actually used his favorite burrito bowl that he gets whenever he goes to Chipotle. I think he's an avid fan, and fans could actually unlock what he liked to eat and order it as well. So that was a cool, unique one where QSRs are getting involved here in sustainability, and I know Chipotle does a lot with sustainability as well. Chris Paul, so this is a cool one. He teamed up with Fanatics for the Chris Paul Foundation, donating old gear to historically Black colleges and universities. So again, really trying to give back to local community. And the last one is Kate Hudson, so obviously very beloved. She teamed up with Instacart to match 500,000 meals to Feeding America. So this is how brands are continuing to tap into endorsements, influencers, celebrities, and really trying to get creative with kind of tapping into their IP. And then on this next slide, I mentioned, racial equality and women's empowerment. These have been really kind of hot topics we've seen a lot of cool campaigns around. So the first one is Sophia Carson. This is something that she did on behalf of Pepsi at the MTV Video Music Awards. I believe this is in August, or I think it was August last year, where this campaign was helping raise $100,000 for the NAACP. Unmute Your Voice campaign around the Black Lives Matter movement. So again, a really kind of big stage where big eyeballs, but kind of supporting racial equality. And then there was actually one that had a bit more of a trigger promotion, right? So the more people that kind of applied, or the more people that kind of leveraged Uber Eats, they got coupon codes, so discounting. So this was around the weekend, Black History Month. The one right next to it, this is one around Vistaprint, which is a big partner, longtime partner of the Boston Celtics, where they were offering $25,000 grants to the NAACP. The Washington football team partnered with FanDuel, up and coming daily fantasy brand, to donate $1 million to the Negro College Fund as well. And then over to the right, kind of getting into women's empowerment, which we're seeing more and more, especially in sport and entertainment. But this one's really cool with Alex Morgan, obviously U.S. women's soccer team champion, with Barbie. And it's a women's empowerment role model for young girls. With They actually built a Barbie for her, and it kind of talked about her story of how they played a really big role in her life, and she wants to motivate young girls. And then this one on the top right was actually very unique. So the Sacramento Kings and Nike, they created this kind of Girls Who Move the World campaign. And it was specifically for 13-year-old girls, to keep them within sports, because what they were doing, they were finding in some kind of local research, was in that local market, by 14 years old, girls were twice as likely as boys to drop out of sports. And they wanted to really try to prevent this and have them stay active in the last couple of years. So this is a really cool initiative where it was really hyper local, targeted to a very specific age and gender. And the last was Brooklyn Nets. Again, they do a ton in their local community. They're kind of built on local community initiatives. They did something with Johnny Walker around International Women's Day, where they got a big celebration together. So a couple of really cool campaigns that just kind of a few that we pulled off the platform. I did want to kind of address some challenges that we are helping nonprofits with, just to kind of help centralize some of the ideas that we talked about. So I think one of the things that we're constantly hearing, where the data that we're kind of sourcing, whether it's desktop research or in tools like Sponsor United, is really helping nonprofits tie back their cause to a brand's existing objectives, right? So understanding what a brand that you might be reaching out to, whether it's a hyper local, a regional, national, global brand, understanding their historical investments. What are they doing in the community cause related fundraising space, and outlining a company's kind of organizational priorities. I think that's something that we're really kind of helping, and that can help nonprofits, because, kind of going to my second point, I think the biggest challenge that we're hearing from nonprofits is, I don't have time and I don't have resource. But seeing kind of the who's doing what with who, and which assets are actually being given to nonprofits, and kind of best practices, not so best practices, what to avoid, what brands are investing in and doubling down, and that's kind of been helpful. And then the last thing is, kind of, we mentioned it all throughout this little presentation, was really identifying best practices, right? Who's doing a really good job? What are cool new things that are emerging? Trends regionally, nationally, globally. Understanding a lot of the folks on this discussion are kind of probably with local, more regional nonprofits. Some might be in more national, where there's kind of different chapters, where you might be helping support from a national level to local chapters. And I think that's something that we've been helping our 25, 30 nonprofit clients with. But I do want to hear from you guys too. And Roy, I know you guys probably have some questions. So those are the slides I wanted to take you guys through. But anything that you guys wanted to ask me just around trends in the industry, for questions, thoughts, feedback.
I can jump in here. I know, Rajiv, one of the questions we get frequently from organizations is how they can best make a connection to a sponsor, right? It's easy to identify when you look at global level sponsors or national, international level sponsors for major sports teams or leagues, but most nonprofits don't necessarily have the same type of inventory that an NFL team would have. So
Right.
what do you recommend for nonprofits to go through that process and identify how they can best approach a sponsor?
Yeah, I think it's doing that desktop research or that digging of, all right, what are the four kind of things that brands really care about, and how do any of those align with my initiatives that I'm looking to accomplish? Seeing some of their historical investments, which has been helpful for some of our clients in the hospital space, and some kind of local foundations around uh, health and illnesses, has been helpful, because if there is a soccer connection, right? If brand X in the Carolinas is actually partnered with minor league soccer teams, and you can come in and see how they're activating, and you guys have a potential to kind of activate with youth, and you have a soccer angle that you can play in, you can kind of draw on that connection as well. But really understanding, what is this brand's identity, right? Like, what are they historically investing in within sports and entertainment? Because then you kind of get a baseline understanding of, all right, is this a really good prospect? Are they a good fit? Do they have the funds to help me out in my community and cause? So I think really doing that extra digging, but really understanding, what are they already doing?
Yeah, I think that the challenge is, as they do, is, as you said, to kind of figure out what inventory they have and what's valuable back for a sponsor. I know that frequently when we talk to sponsors, they'll tell us that somebody's approaching them without making any connection between the organization, the sponsor, the cause. And it's the same thing with athletes, about how organizations will approach a team and just ask for the star player without having done any research to
Right.
connect that athlete to the cause that they have. So when you look at the partnerships that have worked well, what do you see as the laying the groundwork for that success?
Yeah, great question. I think it's the ability to see inventory that maybe you don't have currently, or you don't know about, but you can easily create, right? So one thing that we're seeing a lot of success in, that brands are eagerly participating in this new digital world, are things like podcasts, which can be easily produced and kind of distributed. And understanding if a brand's actually doing that, or a specific category, not even a brand, is skewing towards, all right, they're doing more digital. We know we don't really have a ton of physical assets to give, right? We have a story, we have a really strong story. We can actually tell that through producing video content, social media, which is kind of becoming the norm, and it's easy to produce, and you can kind of shoot videos on your phone or whatnot. But identifying these different types of assets that brands are already shifting to, because there aren't really in venue events really anymore. But I think identifying those new assets, like those podcasts, like virtual presenting sponsorships, kind of these kind of virtual happy hours, seeing what they're already doing can kind of help play up to what you guys can potentially use in discussions and initial outreach, or actually build and easily kind of monetize to raise awareness and funds.
I think it's important, as you started talking about the process for nonprofits to help identify what type of inventory they have, to think beyond the box just of being an event, or we have a dinner, or we have a golf outing or something like that, and think about everything you do as an organization. All of the programming you do is inventory that can serve as good material for a sponsor, whether it's videos of the work that you're doing, whether it's communications with board members. For sponsors, they're looking for access to people who have decision-making ability in different capacities. So having access to sponsors or to donors through newsletters or other communication like that is something that can be really important for a sponsor to understand how that can benefit them. And that's our job as nonprofits, to make that connection easy and not make them have to dig. If they're the ones that are providing funding, they're not going to want to have to dig, because they've got 50 groups or 100 groups approaching them for those same sponsorship dollars. So you have to state your case about why your inventory that you have available is more productive.
Yeah. I think, leveraging your network is spot on. And making sure you can kind of poke around and use tools like LinkedIn to make sure that you might have a couple of degrees of separation, but getting that warm intro, that's always going to help, right? But being prepared with, okay, I know what you've done historically. Let me introduce me, my story, my cause, and what we can potentially do, and offering solutions rather than just kind of asking for funds. I think that goes a long way as well. One of the things that was interesting that I've learned as we start to partner with brands is, um, a lot of brands are actually, they don't know how to find just even traditional rights holders, not even nonprofits. But I was shocked to see one of our bigger brand clients in an up and coming space in sports. I can't really mention it, otherwise it'll be a dead giveaway. But they said, Rajiv, like, I'm going to use your platform for contacts on the rights holder side. And I was like, how do you mean? He was like, well, 80% of the deals that I do, I'm reaching out proactively and I'm spending 6, 7 figures with them, which was actually shocking to me because a lot of these pro teams, minor league properties, are getting 6, 7 figure inbounds, which is interesting. But I think it's also putting yourself out there and kind of building a profile so people can actually find you too. Because there's a lot of brands that, I'd say most brands now, especially most established brands, they want to give, they want to support certain causes, and understanding what their C-level really supports and is passionate about personally. That's really good to know, but they need to be able to also find you as well. So making sure that you have your own way of being found, whether it's through LinkedIn or other tools, that's super important.
I'm gonna, Bob sent me a message privately. Bob, you want to jump on and talk about that? Because I think that that's a great point that you raised there in terms of how to start the process.
No, my comment was that if your cause or charity has some type of diversity component too, which we've already identified as being one of the three most top of mind topics this past year, a lot of the larger corporations have diversity officers or executives, and they sometimes can be a very good place to begin to be sure you are on target with their diversity objectives. And they can kind of lead you to other areas of the company um, as they feel fit.
Yeah, I totally agree, Bob. That's spot on. And I think even a little bit of desktop research to kind of see what brands align with your cause marketing. Just a quick Google search will kind of probably give you a longer list than you had thought of. And then kind of doing a little bit of digging, again, using a tool like LinkedIn or like a Sponsor United or something similar, just to kind of see, all right, where can I weave in my story, right? They've already indicated they have a historical propensity to invest in these types of causes and foundations and charities. What's my unique selling point? So I think that extra digging has kind of helped our clients, and not just on the nonprofit space, but especially in the nonprofit space of, okay, I found my niche. I know my niche. I found the right person. I'm introducing my story. I think United is in our DNA, right? Sponsor United, the whole, again, just kind of why we built this is we want to give everyone a giant peek behind the curtain as to who's partnered with who, and breaking out community cause related, like you've seen. That's one of 500 assets that we've actually broken out. So people can actually have this kind of glass door of, okay, there's transparency here. Like, we can actually do some partnerships. You saw there was actually 3 stakeholders in most of those campaigns, right? It was a brand, a rights holder, and a nonprofit. So maybe I need to go after both a brand and a rights holder together and kind of share my voice. And I might want to start with my local market, or maybe start with a specific league association. Maybe I want to start at the amateur minor league level and then kind of go to the pros. But I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. It's just really positioning.
And I think that the issues you raised about doing the research are critical, because from a sponsor's perspective, you're going to be approached by dozens, if not hundreds of organizations that are looking for sponsorship. And so you really have the luxury of the choice to evaluate which ones are going to be most effective for your brand to be aligned with. And you may have some community missions, as Bob said, if you're getting in through kind of through the DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, you're going to come at it a little bit from a different lens, but you still have to validate and establish for that sponsor why your organization can make that connection more effectively than another group.
Yeah. Another thing too, just in terms of like that role that you guys had mentioned, right? That role didn't necessarily exist as frequent as it does now. Every Fortune 500 company has one. And it's at the C level, so that's probably the person to start with, but they're building broader teams around that. I know coming from, big billion-dollar company Nielsen, the CEO made himself the chief diversity officer as well, or put himself on that board. So you're really seeing that at the top level, and you'd be surprised how many kind of meetings you could probably book if you bring the right story and do a little bit of that kind of digging to these C-level folks. Now they might not take the meeting, but they'll probably get you in front of the right people on their teams to kind of help understand if there's a fit, if there's alignment. But that's something that's very new. We're actually seeing it. We've got a lot of clients that are newer and not nonprofits, but doing more in the kind of cultural space. And that's the number one target they're going after, that direct title. So I guess, again, things like LinkedIn can really help with that. But that's something that we'll probably see more and more as time goes by.
Yeah, there's no question that spending the time to do that research is important. And the other element that I think it comes back to is creativity, of finding ways to help the sponsor identify the best connection that you have for that sponsor. We see a lot of sponsors we've spoken to say, we don't want to do just a regular golf tournament or just a one-day golf tournament, because there's not truly an ongoing connection or value from a brand perspective to the cause. And they really want to look out there and see, you've got a mission as a nonprofit. So let's look at the mission that you have and try and find a way to connect that brand over the course of the year, not just for a one-day event or a couple of days of a conference.
Yeah. One other thing, just in terms of outreach that we've kind of found successful is obviously personalization, right? I think a lot of these brands are, especially the big corporate brands, they're inundated by not just tens, 20, like hundreds a day of vendors like us, right? Of rights holders, teams, esports. How do you cut through the clutter, right? Personalized videos have actually been working for our business, where we've got a platform to show, right? But shooting a 31-minute video using some free apps that are out there, or even on your phone, saying like, I'm putting a face to the name, I'm actually going to tell you my story. That's been a really interesting differentiator where we've seen success with our business, but especially coming from a nonprofit, like it probably, it definitely will be a bit more powerful coming from you with the face and actually telling your story and narrating it. And I think you're more likely to break through that connection.
So give us an example in terms of a video. What type of video do you think that has been successful?
Yeah, so I'll kind of speak to what we're doing, although I think it kind of follows suit. But introducing yourself, I think a lot of people on the brand side are inundated. So actually getting a face to the name of, hey, I'm a real person. I'm not just a bot that's spamming you with spamming hundreds of people and just buying lists and shooting them out, and actually calling the person's name that you're writing the video to. Introducing yourself, your background, why you think there might be a good fit, and then kind of doing a bit of storytelling, right? Share your experience, share your background. I mean, we're a technology platform, so we've actually shown snippets of, hey, here's your brand profile. Here's what we know in terms of what you guys are investing in historically, how things have changed year over year. And oh, by the way, here's a competitor, or here's your category rolled up and where you over under index, right? It's a little different from your outreach, but being able to say, hey, Pepsi, I saw that you did this Unmute Your Voice campaign. I want to tell you about something similar that we have going on with our foundation, but here are a couple ideas that I think might align with some of your objectives based off of these historical investments. I think that stuff goes a long way, and people are actually more likely to see it. A lot of these applications actually kind of give you read receipts. So you can actually start tracking that as a campaign, right? Like, are they actually watching my content? If they are, okay, like this isn't an email that got ignored. I think it's certainly where you're probably doing heavy outreach, but being able to actually see, did someone actually watch the content that I sent out? Or even if it's like a PowerPoint, or if you have a tool to kind of see, hey, was this opened and looked at? I think that's really good too.
When you talk about video, what are you finding as the right type of length to be most effective? I know that there's different theories on how long that can be to keep somebody's attention.
60 seconds is probably ideal. Probably max 120 seconds is the most you go, right before people drop off. But in 60 seconds, you can get through quite a bit, especially if you're kind of telling a personal story of why you're supporting this cause and why you've developed this nonprofit or you've become part of it. And you want to kind of just use it as almost like a teaser, right? And talk about how their brand can align, how their objectives can align with what you guys are looking to do. And if you'd like to learn more, please reach out, and then just kind of leave that contact information. But I think shorter and sweeter and to the point is people appreciate that, because one of the things that we've learned of doing mass outreach is, people are inundated, right? And I think one thing that's actually come out that's been a positive in the last 12, 14 months is people have had time, right? So people are taking meetings now more than ever, and things are starting to get back to normalcy. But there's been a lot of kind of virtual networking, but in order to kind of qualify, like, hey, okay, I do have limited time. I'm open to taking more meetings than I did, and doing more partnerships than I've done in the past, because we need to kind of do some stuff and stay relevant and be more digital. I think that kind of cuts through the clutter if you're able to deliver a video message.
The other area I think is interesting is, I know on the Sponsor United platform, you can break things down to a pretty granular level in terms of looking at spending across properties and across geography and everything of that nature. When you're doing that type of research, I think one area that's interesting is to evaluate what is a better strategy in terms of, do you want to work with somebody who's already in that market, or are you better off trying to reach out to a group that maybe hasn't broken into that market, and as a nonprofit you might be able to be a conduit to get them into that door?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think the beauty of what we've created, and it continues to build, and it's a breathing platform, is we're not just tracking the big brands, right? The Geicos and the McDonald's of the world. We're tracking all the smaller challenger brands too. So everyone that's coming into the sports and entertainment space that is trying to find their own unique voice, there's always opportunities there. Depending on how you want to establish your story in maybe a more localized regional market, you might want to see who has the most deals in Charlotte, North Carolina versus I think Nicole's Miami, Florida, although I think she might have had to jump. Who's in Miami, right? And look at year over year, how many deals did they have within sports in Miami in 2019 versus 2020 versus the latest 12 months. So you can actually cut it by who's actually emerging, doing more, and actually investing, and who's divesting, right? What brands are probably not doing as well and are really cutting back on spend even for good causes. So you can actually kind of use those insights and filter by who's got the most partnerships, who's got the least partnerships. Now, a lot of our clients actually will say, I'm going to go low to high because the high to low, like everyone's reaching out to those companies, but the low to high approach, I know it's probably going to be a longer burn and tougher, but they're probably not being called on. And if there might be a few people in these local markets that really align with us. So the flexibility of kind of seeing who's out there by market, by Nielsen, DMA, and who's spending in certain sports, entertainment properties, even things like esports, which I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out. There's opportunity there, right? You're getting in front of a youthful audience. So if your causes are around youth and local community, that's a good opportunity to tap into some of those endemic brands as well.
I think that brings up an important point, as you said there, about going low to high. Some of those lower spending organizations may not have the budgets to get at the large professional sports teams or groups like that. And if you've got an organization that has some connection to athletes, current retired athletes, that can be very attractive to a sponsor in terms of creating, and again, thinking outside of your regular type of programming, how you can provide value back for that sponsor through your existing relationships. And so I know that there's a lot of groups that try and cultivate relationships with athletes, and it's a long process. I want to see if Greg can unmute his mic for a minute, and we'll put him on the spot. And Greg's former NFL player that does a lot of work with the retired players in Chicago. And Greg, I think it'd be interesting for people to hear about how you guys have been approached from a sponsorship level and in terms of people trying to get you involved with their organizations.
Are you speaking from the former players group?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I haven't been the direct contact on that, but I know from the team side, a lot of sponsors wanted to have connections with specific players. It was always a challenge because you needed to work through agents and that sort of thing when you were trying to get a team related sponsorship or a sponsor that's connecting you're on the team side to incorporate players directly in. But yeah, there's the retired players group definitely gets approached. A lot of the types of involvement that is asked for of former players is come to the golf event or come to a signing or something along those lines. And there definitely are a lot of athletes that really want to have a deeper relationship. There are athletes that are doing better thing, more deeper things in the community than just a signing or just a appearance at a golf outing. And I think finding ways to tap into that could be valuable to sponsors. But yeah, it's always a lot of the outreach is come for the former players groups is come to this outing and that sort of thing. I think there's definitely I think athletes are using their platform a lot more for change, and I think there's a market for that connection that the athletes have with the general public to leverage their desire to make change that really is getting better and better, but continues to need to be tapped into more.
I think Greg raises a really important point, which is, as nonprofits, one of the most effective ways that you can build that relationship with the athletes is to get them involved in doing something tangible. And as Greg said, deeper than just showing up and making an appearance to play in a golf outing or be at a dinner or take photos, sign autographs. They're used to being a celebrity. They've been conditioned that being a celebrity is kind of what people expect from them. So when you break through that model and give them an opportunity to go and work with you at the sites of one of your programs or at something that's substantive in terms of how your nonprofit operates. One of the best fundraisers that I was ever trained by talked about the fact that what the eyes don't see, the heart won't feel. And so if you give somebody the opportunity to go with you to a program and to the services that you provide, they're going to walk away with an entirely different concept of what your organization does than what might be, let's say, a quick couple-minute video at a dinner or a golf outing, where they don't have that same connection. So I would encourage you to think about that going in advance, and finding, again, it takes time and research, just as Rajiv said and as Greg said, about how you can make a connection with an athlete and understand what's in their background. Not just you're going to approach Greg while he's working for the Bears or the Cubs and say, I want this star player because he's a star player. But if you're involved in a literacy program or financial literacy or STEM education or nutrition, any type of area, look at what's in that person's background and find a way to make that connection so that when it comes across a team's desk as a request to connect with a player, they understand why that makes sense.
Sorry, Roy, was that to me? I cut out for a minute.
Yeah, that's okay. So, I think, Rajiv, I don't know if you've got any kind of closing thoughts or if there's other questions. I know Abby, who's done a great job helping coordinate all the details for our webinars and programs, has put the little survey in the chat. It would be great if you're able to fill that in for us and give us your feedback. But we do want to open it up and see what other questions there are, and see what else we can do. I see there's a couple other things in the chat, so let's go through those. Edmund, did you want to jump on and ask a question?
I'm happy to go through. I see that Nicole sent one through a couple minutes back. I'm happy to kind of answer that one to the best I can. I haven't come across this, but how do you get a company athlete to help with your nonprofit when they already have their own? I think it's differentiating. That's probably the way that I would go, right? I would do a bit of investigating on exactly how you differ, right? And sometimes there might not be a fit, but chances are that their nonprofit is completely different. And if it's a little too similar, I don't think that it's probably going to work out. But understanding how are they activating, what are they doing for their nonprofit that you like? How can you differentiate? How can you also amplify their nonprofit coupled with your nonprofit, right? So there might be a benefit for both of you guys. So I would kind of think that way of, okay, I can actually add value, and here's how, because I think that's what even brands are probably looking for, right? They know that they have to give, they want to give, and they're going to have kind of a finite amount of funds to give, but putting yourself in kind of your, like the customer mindset of, okay, why are they going to take this meeting with me? If I were them, why would they donate to my fund? I think something as simple as that, I know that that's helped us grow our business significantly, of understanding kind of the diagnosis of, okay, I understand your position. I understand what you're looking to achieve. Of the 5 things you've told me, here are 3 things we can help with, and here's how. So kind of listing it out that way, but putting yourself in your kind of prospect's shoes is, I think, always a huge win. I got one here from, it looks like Edmund Wood was a former scout of Sponsor United. So good to see you. Okay, congratulations. So you work for a nonprofit in Buffalo now, approach prospective corporate partners and find it hard to balance the benefits of us, the community, with here's the benefits to you, and list out all the assets. In this particular case, Edmund, I would probably kind of see what they've been doing over the last few years. Look at their kind of category, their vertical, right? If it's a banking brand versus it's a restaurant brand, how is the industry actually doing as a whole? What is the industry doing? Not just that specific brand. So kind of give a little bit of a step back landscape analysis of, okay, this is what's going on in your category. And while you particularly might not be doing something in our space for our cause, these are what your competitors are doing. And this is why I think you would be a really good fit, right? So kind of taking a step back and kind of looking at the space that they're in. And I think in doing that, Edmund, you'll probably find a couple other prospects that might even be a better fit. So that would be my recommendation there. Okay. Nairi, if I'm saying that right. Thank you for speaking. My question, do you see a trend towards larger companies or is investing in leisure casual sports play towards all ages? I'm referencing other companies like Outdoor Voices that focus on leisure rather than competition. I think, and this is just kind of my personal opinion, I think that these big brands probably want to go where there's big eyeballs, right? I think there's definitely an appetite for these leisure and more casual sports play, but that's probably more coming from the local community and local sponsors, whereas a bigger corporate sponsor like a Coca-Cola and McDonald's, they're probably tasked with, okay, you have this budget to spend on cause marketing, but we need to see some kind of return on not even investment, but like a return on like how many people are actually seeing this and seeing that we're donating or kind of giving. So I would say that for kind of the more leisure and casual, it's probably going to skew towards younger brands that actually align with that. At least for now, could be subject to change. I mean, like American Cornhole is now on ESPN, so who knows? I could be completely off.
I think it also comes up, Neri, where you look at some of the participation sports that have developed almost an association or an alliance of the sport and social clubs around the country. And so sponsorship of any one city's club that may have several thousand members and still have a lot of participation is good. But as Rajiv said, they're looking at how can we get more eyeballs? How can we get a larger presence? So they may prefer to do the sponsorship at the level of the national association rather than the club in LA or Chicago or Miami.
The other thing I'll mention too is with these bigger organizations, right? You think about like big categories like QSR, health insurance. Going to the national person is oftentimes not the right person. One thing we've actually been helping customers with, and really in like minor league sports too, just because 90% of their corporate partners are going to come from local regional businesses, is okay, finding the actual regional marketing director, right? Because that's probably the person that you need to start with. So depending on where you are in the country or in the world, if you're in the Pacific Northwest and the national folks are in Chicago, they're probably overseeing some of the bigger partnerships. You need that Pacific Northwest marketing director. And it can be tricky to find, but that's where you're probably going to get the most success. And it's not for everyone, but like a lot of the big categories, quick serve restaurants, health insurance, even like auto manufacturers, right? There's a lot of dealership associations, which are pools of dealerships that are kind of run by territory. So if you're looking at kind of certain categories and industries, you kind of have to navigate of, okay, I can't just go to the national person who's getting inundated by thousands of people. I'm going to go to more of the regional folks who are still getting inundated, but by more relevant businesses. So I would kind of go that route too and navigate through.
And I want to jump in here with Meredith's question. It looks like maybe she had to jump off, but I think it's an important question, which is, if you're at a nonprofit that's controversial, how do you get past that for corporate sponsorship? And I wanted to hear her thoughts on what controversial meant, because what that means for one brand is very different from what that means for another brand. So Rajiv, as you look at things and counsel your clients, that element of controversy, it's hard to put your finger on exactly what that means for a brand unless you've been aligned with them for a while and understand what their image is.
Yeah, and I think the more big and more corporate the brand is, the harder it is to get them to kind of invest. And that's just going to be a challenge of maybe being a publicly traded brand. And Now, some of these up and coming kind of challenger brands that align with your objectives and your stance, that's probably where your best bet is. But I think with anything controversial, typically what we're seeing, especially with some of our clients and just my clients in the past, whether it was Nielsen, Yahoo, and some of the other places I worked, is they typically try to avoid controversy because of internal politics. And it might be better served to go after kind of some of these newer brands, edgier brands that are willing to take risks or actually are big believers in your cause.
I think that's a key point, which is what's controversial for Coca-Cola or McDonald's as a large international brand may not be controversial for a small upstart protein bar or drink or something that may be trying to establish it and build their brand and their image on a platform that relates to what your cause is. And so getting an understanding of what those founders of that brand might be interested in and what types of other marketing and programs they're doing is important. So Rajiv, I want to thank you for coming on with us today. I think you gave us a lot of great information. We'll have a recording of this posted on our site, and we'll get the slides from Rajiv so we can put that on that page as well and connect you directly to him if you have questions about the Sponsor United platform. And again, there's some amazing tools and resources there that allow you to really dig in from a sponsorship perspective and get a sense of where money is being spent and how that money is being spent. Abby put the link to the survey in the chat. We'll have her drop it there one more time, so it's right here at the end. And then we'll send that out as well. But I hope you'll take a couple minutes to fill that out and look at some of the new things that we're doing. So come and take a look at the task forces, our message boards, and the Sports Philanthropy World registration is now open as well. And again, everything we already do with podcasts and webinars, lots of social media. And I encourage you to update your email preferences so that you can get exactly the communications that you're looking for. So to everybody, thank you so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate your time. And don't forget to live generously. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate the time.